I woke up to footprints in the snow. It was the crunch that woke me. That slow, deliberate crunch. Crunch of snow being stepped on. Not the random scatter you hear when a branch sheds ice or when the wind tosses drifts around. This was steady, human, and close. I lay still in bed, holding my breath. The sound was just outside my bedroom window, moving toward the back of the house. My clock read 3:12 a.m., the kind of hour when the world feels thinner and your brain tries to tell you it's just a dream. But I wasn't dreaming. I should explain, I live in a small one-story rental house, the kind that's more wood than insulation, out in the quieter part of town. I moved here 6 months ago after a breakup, wanting space, wanting quiet. The neighborhood's made up of older houses, a few yards fenced, most not. Out back there's nothing but an open stretch of snow-covered grass that leads to a row of skeletal trees, and beyond that, a narrow creek. In summer it's peaceful. In winter, it's too quiet. You hear everything. That week, we've been hit with the heaviest snowstorm of the year. Nearly a foot fell overnight, piling against doors and window sills. I've been snowed in since yesterday afternoon. Work was remote anyway, so I made coffee, watched the storm from my couch, and went to bed early. Which is why the sound of footsteps in the middle of the night didn't make sense. I got up and padded to the window. The frost was thick, but I could see enough. A single line of footprints leading from the tree straight toward my back door. Only, there weren't any leading back. The snow was untouched except for that one trail. Perfect, crisp impressions. Whoever it was had come from the trees and never left. My first thought was maybe a delivery guy had taken a shortcut through my yard. But no, there was nothing to deliver, and no one delivers packages in the middle of a blizzard at 3 a.m. The crunching sound had stopped. I stood there listening, my skin prickling, waiting for something. Another footstep, a knock, anything. The silence pressed in. Then I remembered something I didn't want to remember. The mudroom. The mudroom's this small, cold little space right off my kitchen. Bare walls, old tile floor. It's where the back door is. The lock works fine, but the only window in there is one of those tiny single panes. And last week I noticed a crack in the bottom corner. Just a hairline, but enough for cold air to sneak in. Enough for someone to test it. I grabbed the flashlight from my nightstand and moved slowly down the hall. Every creak of the floor sounding 10 times louder in the quiet. When I reached the kitchen, I turned the flashlight toward the mudroom door. The gap at the bottom of the door glowed faintly from the outside floodlight. No movement. I told myself to stop being paranoid. It was just snow. Maybe an animal. Maybe creek. It came from above me. Not the roof, the attic. I froze. The attic in this place isn't a proper room. It's a crawl space accessible by one of those fold-down ladders in the hallway. I'd only been up there once to toss a box of old holiday stuff into a corner. It's the kind of space where dust hangs in the air and the insulation looks like dirty cotton candy. No one should be up there, and yet that sound had been heavy enough to be a person shifting their weight. My brain scrambled for excuses. Snow falling off the roof? The house settling? But settling doesn't sound like a slow, deliberate creak in the middle of the night after fresh footprints appear at your door. I took a step toward the hallway, then stopped. If I pulled that ladder down, whatever was up there would have a direct line into my house. If they want to come down, they could. I backed into the kitchen and quietly picked up my phone from the counter. My hands were so cold, I fumbled the unlock screen twice before I could type. No signal. Of course. The storm had knocked out half the towers in this part of town. I swallowed and turned my flashlight toward the mudroom door. If I couldn't call anyone, maybe I could get to my car and drive to the next street over where reception might work. But my keys were hanging on the hook in the mudroom, right by that cracked little window. I took one slow step toward it, listening. From above, another faint creak, followed by something softer, like a slow drag of fabric against wood. That's when I decided I wasn't sticking around to play detective. I went to the living room instead and pulled on my coat and boots. The front door was clear. No footprints there, just a smooth blanket of snow. I eased it open, wincing at the squeak of the hinge, and stepped out into the icy air. The cold bit instantly into my face, making my eyes water. I turned to lock the door behind me, and that's when I saw it. Through the living room window, just barely visible past the curtain, the attic hatch was hanging down. It hadn't been like that before. I knew because I'd walked under it yesterday. The wooden ladder was unfolded halfway, like someone had started to come down and then stopped. I wanted to scream, but my throat locked. I backed down the steps, boots crunching in the snow, and hurried to my car. The driver's side door was frozen shut, but I yanked it until the ice gave. I climbed in, locked all the doors, and started the engine. The headlights lit up the front of the house, the white siding glowing in the storm. The attic hatch was still down, ladder still hanging, swaying just slightly like it had been touched. I put the car in reverse and backed out onto the street, tires spinning on the ice. I didn't care. I drove until I hit the main road, where the plows had cleared path. Only when I saw the first set of streetlights did I finally get a signal. I called the police. My voice shook as I explained. Footprints, no return prints, attic hatch down. They told me to stay put in the lit parking lot I'd pulled into. An officer would meet me there. It took about 15 minutes for the cruiser to arrive. I followed them back to my house, headlights bouncing off the snowbanks. The driveway was just as I'd left it. No new prints, no sign of movement. Inside, the officers swept the place, their heavy boots echoing in the quiet. One of them disappeared into the attic. I stood in the kitchen with the other, staring at the mudroom door. When the attic officer came down, he was holding a dusty sleeping bag and a backpack. Looks like someone's been up there a few days, he said. Empty food wrappers, a bottle of water, and this. He set the backpack on the table. Inside was a phone, old, cracked, but still charged enough to power on. When the screen lit up, the lock screen showed my Wi-Fi network in the corner. Whoever it was had connected to it. The officer explained that in storms like this, some people look for empty attics or crawl spaces to camp out. My place must have seemed perfect. Quiet street, easy attic access from the side of the house where the sidings wore enough to climb. They didn't find a person. By the time I'd heard the first creak, they'd probably been awake, listening to me move through the house. They might have been watching from the attic hatch when I slipped out the front door. After they left, I stood for a long time in the kitchen, staring at the ceiling. The snow outside had already covered the footprints. It was like they'd never been there at all. But I knew they had. I'd seen them, and I knew, without proof, without seeing a face, that whoever had made them had stayed long enough to learn the sound of my steps, the way my house moved in the wind, the rhythm of my nights. I replaced the attic lock the next morning. I bolted the mudroom window shut, but every winter night since, when the wind carries that faint crunch, crunch, crunch from outside, I freeze and listen, because now I know sometimes in the middle of a storm, people come closer than you think, and sometimes they don't leave. I stayed home during the blackout. Then someone knocked using my name. The snow came down like wet ash. Thick, heavy flakes swallowed the streetlights and made the whole block look foggy and raw. By 8 p.m., the power died with a dull click, and my apartment went quiet in a way that fell hollow. The fridge hummed, then didn't. The heater sighed and shut off. Darkness pressed against every window. I live on Birch Street, 3rd floor, into the hall. Old brick building, thin walls. I lit 2 candles and found the little camping lantern I keep under the sink. The glow made the living room look smaller. The clock on the stove flashed and then went black for good. Outside, the storm had already buried the cars. Across the street, A few people were using their phone lights in the windows, pale dots drifting behind curtains. In the stairwell, someone trudged up with boots squeaking, and somewhere far away a dog barked once and went silent. I texted the building group chat. Power's out here. Everyone okay? A few dots popped up. Yup, same here. Cohen says crews are stuck. Stay warm. I made tea on a camp stove by the open kitchen window, so I didn't gas myself. The water never quite boiled. It just trembled. I sipped anyway, hands around the cup, and tried not to think about the night getting colder. Then came the first knock. It was soft and polite, 3 taps. Not my door, farther down the hall. I froze and listened. A voice spoke, smooth and cheerful, the kind of voice you trust without thinking. Building maintenance, it said, checking heaters and alarms. I relax a little. This place is creaky. During storms, the super sometimes does rounds. I heard my neighbor open up. Their conversation was a low blur. A few minutes later, the same voice moved to the next door. Building maintenance, he repeated. Quick check. Another door opened. Another hush of words. I didn't want to be rude, so I picked up my phone and typed in the chat. Anyone expect maintenance tonight? While I waited for a reply, I set my mug down and clicked off the lantern. I don't know why I did that. Maybe I wanted to hear better. Maybe I didn't want to be seen. The voice got closer. Footsteps stopped right outside my door. I stood in the hallway of my own place, holding my breath like a kid hiding during a game. The knock came. 3 taps. Calm. Building maintenance, the man said. Quick check. I didn't move. Something in me held back. I leaned close to the peephole. It was black. Not dark black. Covered from the outside. I stepped back so fast I bumped the little table and rattled my keys. My heart started to pound. I thought, okay, maybe snow or a thumb. But the peephole never goes fully dark unless someone is pressed right against it. Hello, the man said, friendly. You there? I swallowed and tried to make a choice. If I said nothing, would he go away? If I answered, would it make things worse? My phone buzzed. The group chat lit up. No maintenance tonight, wrote Nina from 2B. Super stuck across town. Yeah, added Malik from 4A. He just texted me. No staff on site. Another message appeared from an unknown number. Don't open your doors. Then it disappeared like they deleted it. The man outside knocked again, a little harder. I can't hear you, he said. Just need to check your heater. Okay. I kept my mouth shut. I picked up a chair and wedged the back under the doorknob. My fingers shook so badly I dropped the chair twice before I got it stuck right. The man said my first name. He said it's soft, like we'd met. I never told him my name. I never said a word. Come on, he said. It's freezing. I'm just trying to help you. My mouth went dry. I backed up toward the kitchen and set the lantern behind the sink where it wouldn't throw shadows to the door. The apartment felt suddenly full of corners. He tried the handle. The chair creaked but held. I stared at the wood grain of my door like I could look thicker. The deadbolt was old but steady. Still, that sound, metal turning, squeezed my chest. My phone pinged again. A message from the super himself, forwarded by Malik. No one for maintenance is there. Do not open. Police lines are jammed. Stay inside. The voice outside turned patient, almost bored. All right, he said. I'll come back. His steps went on down the hall. I waited, counting slow. 5 seconds. 10. Footsteps faded toward the stairs. A door opened somewhere, closed again. My building breaths quieted then stilled. I let out a little air and told myself not to spiral. Could be a neighbor's friend. Could be a delivery person. Could be a prank. The storm made everything weird. I lifted the peephole cover from inside and peeked through. The hall was empty, but the glass itself was smeared. Greasy, like someone had pressed a palm or cloth right over it. I wiped it with a sleeve. My phone lit the message bubble from my neighbor across the hall, Jules. You good? I typed. Someone knocked. Said maintenance. Cover my peephole. A second later, Same. Didn't answer. Want to come to mine? I stare at my door and thought about the cold space between here and there. The shared hallway, the echo, the open mouth of the stairwell. If the man was still around, he could be waiting on the stairs, one flight down, one flight up, sitting quiet and listening. The building has that kind of silence that drinks sound and gives it back in little shapes. Not yet, I wrote. Let's just text. We sent short messages back and forth to feel less alone. The chat blinked with new warnings. He's knocking on 2C now. He asked to see my smoke alarm. He said he had to record our serial numbers. Someone said they called the emergency line and got stuck on hold for 9 minutes. The temperature dropped another notch. The storm said hush to the world. Wind flicked snow at the windows like nails. A new knock came, different this time, metal on metal. My stomach turned because it wasn't at my door. It came from the bottom of the stairwell, like someone dropped a tool and then picked it back up. I turned off my lantern and let my eyes adjust. The dim glow from the street climbed the curtains and pooled on the floor. I crept to the kitchen and pulled my biggest knife from the block, then immediately felt stupid. If this was nothing, I'd be the person in a dark apartment gripping a knife at nobody. If it was something, a knife felt like a straw in a flood. I slid my phone into my pocket and opened my camera, thumb over the flash. I stood there and listened. A floorboard sighed. Far away, a door latch clicked. The kind of details you only notice when you have no power and no comfort, when the whole building holds its breath. Another friendly knock rolled down the hall, softer like a test. Building maintenance, the voice said again, but this time it drifted. It wasn't right at a door. It was somewhere between units. Practicing, trying the sound in different spots. I backed in my living room and texted Jules. He's still here. 3 dots. Then I could see shadow under my door. Staying silent. I wanted to call someone, but every time I pictured the screen lighting my face, I thought of the dark peephole and the hand on the other side. I turned the brightness down until it hurt my eyes. The steps came back toward me. They stopped. The peephole went black again. I didn't breathe. I didn't blink. I stood there with the knife down at my side and my other hand flat against the wall to steady myself. He spoke through the door so softly I almost thought it was in my head. "Let me in," he whispered. Something in his tone had changed. The friendly layer was gone, rubbed off by the cold. I heard wind hiss in the stairwell behind him. I heard fabric rasp and the quiet clink of something metal against the door frame. I stayed quiet. "Okay," he said after a long time, voice smooth again. "Okay." He left. At least his steps left. Minutes later, the building door banged downstairs, and the wind kicked up and sucked at the hall carpet. The sound of it crawling under my door felt like little fingers. I waited 20 minutes before I took the chair down and tipped it quietly to one side. I slid the chain into place and cracked the door half an inch, just enough to get a sliver of the hall. No one was there, but taped to the wall, a level with me, was a new piece of paper. It was a fake notice of emergency entry. Cheap printer ink, crooked logo, a number that wasn't our management's. It said they were entering units due to winter safety protocols. Under that it listed my apartment number and my name, spelled correctly. I closed the door and locked it again, hands shaking so hard I almost dropped the phone. I texted a photo of the notice to the group. Replies exploded. "That's not real. Wrong logo. Management uses blue paper, not white." "Where did you get your name?" "I didn't know. Packages, maybe. Mailboxes are in the lobby with names on them. Or the intercom directory. Or the building's tenant list. If someone took a picture when the super posted it months ago." I called the non-emergency line. "Busy." I tried again. "Busy." I tried a third time and got a recorded message about heavy call volumes due to the storm. I left my number and a short description and set the phone on the coffee table where I could see it. For the next hour, the building was quiet except for the wind. I put on a second pair of socks and wrapped myself in a blanket. I wished for the dumb hum of the fridge, the ugly buzz of the old bathroom fan. Normal noise, any noise. The silence was a weight. Around 10:30, Jules texted. He's back. Downstairs. Heard the lobby door. Motion light went on and stayed on. I stood up so fast I got lightheaded and had to hold the wall. A dim glow flowed into the hall under my door like water. The lobby motion light bleeds up the stairwell and paints a pale stripe along our floor. It doesn't stay on unless someone's moving, because it's cheap and twitchy and hates to waste power. It stayed on now. Long minutes. Too long. Then I heard scraping. Not my door. At the door across from me. Jules's door. A low, careful scrape. Metal searching for purchase. My mouth opened, but I didn't call out because I didn't want him to know I was listening. I pressed my ear to the wood and stared at my lock like I could make it stronger. The scraping went on. Stopped. A muffled curse, like someone who had learned to swear quietly. Then footsteps again, soft and angry. They passed my door. The peephole went black one more time, then cleared. The lobby light clicked off. The building inhaled. At 11:02, sirens wailed far away. They got closer and then passed, red ghosts sliding through the snow, and kept going. The city was full of little emergencies. We were just one more. Time stretched until it felt thin and delicate. I thought about calling a friend. I thought about getting my coat and boots and going down the fire escape into the alley and over the fence into the neighbor's yard. And what? Stand in the snow with a knife until someone came? I stayed. At 11:31, my phone vibrated. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but then I did. This is Officer Reyes, a woman said. You called about someone posing as maintenance. Yes, I whispered. I told her everything. The knocks, the covered peephole, the fake notice, the scraping at Jules's door, my name on a paper that wasn't real. We have patrols stretched thin, she said, calm but honest. Stay inside. Do not open the door for anyone. If you have a second lock or a chair, use it. We'll try to get a unit over when we can. When? I asked before I could stop myself. When we can, she repeated gently. Keep your phone on. If he comes back, call 15 immediately, even if you've called before. We hung up. I locked the chair back under the knob and sat on the floor with my back to the door, blanket over my shoulders, knife laid flat beside me. I listened to every sound, the tick of the pipes, the sigh of the walls, my own breath too loud in my chest. Sometime after midnight, I must have drifted because a sharp bang snapped me awake. A door slammed downstairs. The building shook like it had flinched. Voices, real ones, low, clipped, steady. I heard boots on the stairs, not trying to be quiet. Flashlights made lines under the door and moved with purpose. A firm knock hit my door this time. 3 times, not polite, not pretending. Police, a voice said. Open up, please. I unwedged the chair and opened the door on the chain. 2 officers stood there, snow dotted across their shoulders, radios crackling. Their breath smoked in the cold hall. You the one who called? The woman asked. Her badge read Reyes. Yes. She glanced at the fake notice on the wall and peeled it down with a gloved hand. We already checked the lobby, she said. Found this on 3 other floors, in a crowbar tucked behind the mailboxes. The male officer nodded. We also found footprints in the stairwell and out the back, over the fence. He left on foot when we came in. Tracks head toward the next block, then vanish at the street. Likely had a car waiting. Officer Reyes looked at the smear on my peephole, then at the chair, then at my shaking hands. You did the right thing, she said. They took statement from half the building by cell light. Everyone wrapped in blankets and coats, faces pale and tired. The officers told us to keep doors locked, even to each other, and to verify anyone who claimed to be from the building in the group chat before opening up. They promised to swing by again before dawn. When they left, the night felt different. Still cold, still dark, but the silence had loosened around the edges. I didn't sleep. I sat back down on the floor with my blanket and watched the line of light under the door fade and brighten as the lobby motion sensor caught dust or wind or nothing at all. Snow kept falling, heavy and patient. In the morning, the power groaned back to life. The fridge coughed awake. The heat rattled in the vents. Streetlights clicked off and showed the world again. White heaps on cars, bent trees, the city slumped under a soft weight. Our group chat buzzed nonstop. Someone posted a clip from the door cam down on the first floor. It showed a man in a UPS jacket over a hoodie, no parcel in his hands. The jacket looked too big and the hood too small, like both had been borrowed. He kept his cap low and his face turned away. When he left, he carried nothing, just walked to the stairwell and tucked the crowbar behind the mailboxes, smooth and practiced like he'd done it before. He had no plates on his truck. He had a smile he put on like a winter hat. He had my name in his mouth. Outside, plows finally carved a path down Birch Street. People came out to brush off cars and shovel stoops and talk too loudly, the way people do after a scare, as if volume can push fear back into the corners. I made fresh tea on a working stove and poured some into a spare thermos for Jules. When I opened my door, the hallway smelled like wet wool and hot metal and relief. We didn't say much. We just passed the thermos back and forth and watched a handful of bright, ordinary morning spill in through the stairwell window. That night, I changed two things. I taped a small square of paper over my peephole from the inside so I could lift it when I chose. And I wrote my name on a sticky note and put it in a drawer out of sight. My door didn't need it. My mailbox didn't need it. My doorstep didn't need it. The city had gone quiet once. It could go quiet again. If it did, I knew what I would do. Lock, wait, listen, and trust the voice in me that said, don't open. Not for a smile. Not for a uniform. Not for a whisper that knows your name. I was driving home in a blizzard. Then the snowplow behind me started ramming my car. The snow was coming down so thick it looked like static on an old TV screen. My wipers were already losing the fight, smearing white slush into streaks that caught the glare of my headlights. The road, County Road 7, was deserted, lined with bare trees that leaned in like they were listening. It was the kind of night where the world feels dead. No other headlights. No houses with lights on. Just me, the hum of the heater, and the sound of snow hissing under my tires. I was 20 minutes from home, crawling along at 30 in a 50 zone, when I saw the glow behind me. Two yellow-white beams punching through the falling snow. A moment later, a massive snowplow emerged from the dark. Its lights flashed, the kind they use to warn drivers to stay back. I eased toward the shoulder, expecting it to pass. But it didn't. It tucked itself right behind me, so close I could see the texture of salt stains on the plow's bumper in my rear-view mirror. Then it hit me. Not hard, not enough to send me spinning, but a solid bump that jolted through the steering wheel. My chest thudded against the seatbelt. My tires skipped a little on the icy asphalt. What the hell? I muttered, gripping the wheel tighter. I tapped my brakes lightly. My hazard lights blinked in the storm, but the plow didn't back off. It bumped me again. For a second, I thought maybe I'd done something stupid. Maybe they were trying to push me off the road to help clear the lane. But then I remembered something from the radio earlier that evening. All county snowplow services had been suspended. Too dangerous, too low visibility. They told everyone to stay off the roads. I squinted at the mirror. The truck's plow blade was chained up, lifted so it wouldn't touch the ground. No snow was being cleared. The lights flashed again, faster now. The truck swerved just a little, nudging to the left, then to the right, like it was trying to herd me toward the narrow turnouts that dotted the road. And here's the part that made my stomach flip. Those turnouts weren't lit. They were just dark pockets in the trees, No street lamps, no houses. Just snow piled high and a few yards of gravel before the forest swallowed everything. I kept my eyes forward. The only safe place I could think of was a gas station about 7 miles ahead. Small, but it had cameras and lights. I pressed the gas, tires whining on the icy surface. The plow kept up. Every so often it'd surge forward and tap my bumper, just enough to make the rear end twitch. Each bump shot panic through my chest. I imagined the back of my car folding in, glass exploding, my world spinning into the trees. Another turnout loomed on my right. The plow jerked toward me, closing the gap, trying to angle me into it. My tires slipped toward the snowbank, but I yanked the wheel and straightened out. Not happening. I whispered, heart pounding so hard it hurt. I thought about calling 911, but I knew the signal out here was trash. I'd lose precious seconds fumbling with the phone, and in that time, the plow could do whatever it wanted. So I stayed focused on the road. 1 mile marker, then another. The snow blurred them so badly, I almost missed the green glow of the gas station sign ahead. It was dark, no pumps running. The store inside was closed, but the lot had floodlights and a couple of cameras I'd seen before when I'd stopped for coffee there. I took the turn into the lot hard, hoping to lose the plow. My tires squealed on the ice, the rear fishtailing before I corrected. I looped wide around the lot to give myself a clear path back to the road if I needed to escape. The plow pulled in too, fast, heavy, the blade catching the light in a way that made it look like a grin. It stopped right at the only exit, its headlights blinding me. For a long moment, neither of us moved. My breath fogged the windshield as I sat there, gripping the wheel, listening to my own heartbeat. Then the truck inched forward, slow and deliberate, like a predator testing the air. I killed my lights so I could see better. The floodlights cast just enough glow for me to make out the cab. The windshield was so caked with ice that I couldn't see the driver's face. But the figure inside was still. Too still. The engine growled. The truck rolled forward a few feet, then stopped again. And that's when another set of lights appeared on the road behind it. Brighter, whiter. Another plow. The first one moved fast. It swung out of the lot and took off down the road, vanishing into the curtain of snow. The second plow pulled in beside me and stopped. Its door opened and a man in a heavy county jacket jumped out, waving both hands. "You okay?" he shouted over the wind. I nodded, still gripping the wheel. "Was that one of yours?" He shook his head sharply. County shut down all operations hours ago. I was headed home when I saw that thing on your tail. We both turned to watch the road where the first plow had vanished. There were no tracks, just smooth snow filling the space where its wheels should have left deep ruts. Later, when the county reviewed the gas station's camera footage, they saw the truck, faded red, no license plates, blocking the end. They saw it peel out, heading north. They also saw that its blade had been chained up, just like I remembered. It wasn't there to clear the snow. It was there for me. I opened the cabin door and realized someone had been living there. The first thing I noticed was the smell. Not the sharp bite of winter air or the musty scent you expect in an old cabin. This was warm, lived in, a mix of coffee, damp clothes, and something faintly metallic like tools left out in the rain. And that smell shouldn't have been there. A co-worker had offered me their family's cabin for the weekend. It's empty all winter, they'd said. Great spot to focus and get away from everything. I've been drowning in remote work deadlines, so I said yes. It was 2 hours north, tucked in the woods by a half-frozen lake. The drive up was pure winter postcard. White fields, snow-laden pines, and barely another car in sight. By the time I arrived, the light was fading and the temperature was dropping fast. The cabin was exactly like the pictures my co-worker had sent, at least from the outside. One story, wood siding, smoke-stained chimney. The snow on the roof was untouched, the driveway buried except for the narrow strip I'd shoveled from my car. When I slid the key into the front lock, it turned without a problem. The door creaked open to a rush of stale heat. That smell hit me, thick and raw. I stepped inside and flicked the switch. The lights came on instantly, bright, warm, as if they'd been left on a minute ago. That's when I noticed the locks. Every interior door had a new deadbolt, shiny brass that didn't match the old cabin hardware. The bathroom, both bedrooms, even the closet off the hallway, all locked tight. In the photos, those doors had been open. The kitchen had looked airy. The bedroom had sunlight streaming in. Now they were closed, sealed, like the place had been sectioned off. I set my bag down and told myself maybe my co-worker's family had renovated. But the kitchen was off, too. A different kettle sat on the stove, one I didn't remember from the pictures. A pair of boots leaned against the wall near the back door, muddy, with snow still melting off the soles. My co-worker had told me the cabin hadn't been used since October. It was mid-January. Those boots were wet. I pulled out my phone to text them, but there was no signal. The heat clicked on, startling me. It wasn't the quiet hum of a modern furnace. It was the heavy rattle of an old system that had been running recently. The air coming through the vents was too warm for a place that had supposedly been shut down for months. I wandered into the living room, trying to shake the feeling crawling on my spine. On the coffee table was a grocery store receipt, curled at the edges from damp. The date, yesterday afternoon. Milk, bread, batteries, 2 packs of instant noodles. The storm outside pressed against the windows, the wind bending the trees. I told myself someone from the family might have dropped by, but that wouldn't explain why the interior doors were locked from the outside. I was still staring at the receipt when I caught movement at the edge of my vision. Through the frosted back window, a shadow passed, slow, deliberate, the height and build of a man. It stopped halfway across the yard, just out of view of the glass. I froze. My breath fogged the window. Then the shadow moved again, disappearing around the side of the cabin. Every instinct screamed to get out, but the wind was howling and the snow was already ankle deep. I grabbed the heaviest flashlight from my bag and headed for the front door. When I reached it, I saw them, tire tracks. Fresh, only half covered by snow. They hadn't been there when I arrived. I decided then I wasn't staying the night. I yanked on my boots and coat, my hands clumsy with adrenaline. That's when I heard it, a low thunk from the back of the cabin. Then the faint, unmistakable creak of a door opening. I darted to the hallway and saw it. The small door at the end, the one that hadn't been locked, was now wide open. A narrow staircase led down into a basement I hadn't known existed. The air that rolled up was damp and sour, like wet concrete and rust. I stood there, gripping the flashlight so hard my knuckles ached listening. Footsteps, slow, steady, coming up from the dark. I backed away until I hit the wall, heart pounding so hard it made my vision blur. I thought about running for the front door, but I didn't want to turn my back on the stairs. The steps stopped. Silence. Then a voice, low and rough. "You're not supposed to be here." Something in that tone snapped me into motion. I bolted for the door, yanking it open and plunging into the storm. The cold slapped me hard, but I didn't stop until I reached my car. My fingers fumbled with the keys, the lock refusing to turn. Behind me, the front door of the cabin creaked open. I jumped into the driver's seat, locked the doors, and cranked the engine. Headlights swept across the yard, and for a split second I saw it. Tall, hood pulled low, the boots from the mudroom now on his feet. His hands were empty, but the way he stood made my stomach drop, like he was deciding whether to come closer. I slammed the car into reverse, tires spinning before catching on the icy driveway. I didn't stop to look back. I made it to the main road and drove until I found a gas station with lights on. The cashier let me use the landline to call the sheriff's department. When I explained where I'd been, the dispatcher was quiet for a moment before saying, "We've had calls about that property. Stay put." An hour later, a deputy met me there. He told me the cabin had been broken into more than once in the past few months. Always in the off-season, always after big snowfalls. Whoever was using it had been living there between visits from the family, moving in supplies, locking off rooms. The tire tracks, the locked doors, the fresh groceries, all signs someone had settled into the storm, and I'd walked right into their home. My coworker was horrified when I called him the next day. They swore the family had changed the locks last summer, but apparently not well enough. I never went back, and sometimes when I think about that night, I wonder if I'd arrived an hour later, would he have still been outside? Or would I have opened the door to find the boots already gone, and one of those locked rooms quietly unlocked from the inside? I was alone in the office tower when the elevator kept opening for someone I couldn't see. The chimes sounded in the empty lobby ding, and the elevator doors slid open to a gap the width of my hand. They stopped there, twitching as if something were in the way. The sensor ticked, the doors tried to close, then bumped against nothing and opened again. Over and over. Open, close, open, close. Like the building was breathing and didn't want to let me leave. I stood in the wind tunnel of that lobby with sleet blowing in through the front doors and thought, if the doors won't shut, it means something's standing there. Except I was the only person in the building. I clean nights in a downtown office block. 30 floors, glass on 3 sides, a granite lobby with a security desk and 2 revolving doors. On normal nights, you see a trickle of late workers and delivery guys. On storm nights, it's just me and the guard. This night, the storm had come in sideways. Drifts banked against the revolving doors until the rubber compressed and the glass stopped spinning. The side doors had blown open and stuck there, letting snow creep across the marble like spilled salt. It was quiet and loud at once, the wind moaning, the flags outside snapping, the building creaking when gusts pushed it. Our guard, Luis, was covering 2 towers. He'd patrol ours, check cameras in the other, then shuffle back across the sky bridge. We had a radio to call him, but moisture had gotten into the mic and it squealed and cut out. "Text me if you need," he'd said. "I'll be 5 minutes either side." I'd already finished 2 floors. It was close to midnight. I was tired and cold and ready to mop the lobby and head out. I went to the elevator, hit the down button, and that's when it started. Ding, doors half open, close, open, close, like an invisible hand kept catching them. "Not tonight," I muttered. I wedged the handle of my mop into the gap and leaned in to check the threshold. The sensor glass was clean. The rubber edge wasn't torn. Nothing on the floor. The panel said the car had come from 23 and was trying to go back to lobby. The weight sensor said occupied. Not full, not empty, 1 person. "Hello," I called without thinking. My voice bounced around the cab and came back thin. "Nothing." I pulled the mop handle out. The doors tried to close and hit air again, bumped, and sprang open an inch. The motor hummed like a throat clearing. The indicator light flickered. I stepped back and texted Luis. "Elevator A is acting weird." He replied, "On my way. Cameras are fogging." I wiped my hands on my coat and went to push the side doors closed. They moved 2 inches and stuck on packed snow. Wind pushed against me, cold and hard. Sleet stung my face. I let go and they snapped open again, letting winter spill in. Behind me, the elevator chimed once more, ding, and the doors finally shut. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. Then they opened. Empty. I stared at the rectangle of brushed steel and mirror and muttered, "Great." I hit the door close button and held it. The door slid shut, stayed shut, the car hummed, and then nothing. No movement. The digital display didn't change. It was like the elevator had decided this was where it lived now. I could have taken the stairs, but the dock, the garbage room, and the janitor closet were all sublevel, basement. And in this building, you can only reach basement by elevator or by going around the block to a loading ramp that's pure ice in winter. So I waited. Luis came in, shoulders dusted white. Doors jammed, he said, squinting at the lobby entrance. Yeah. I gestured at the elevator. This one's being stubborn. He waved his badge at the panel, keyed in a supervisor code, and the car jolted. The doors slid the rest of the way open like a breath released. We both peered in. Empty surfaces, mirror with those tiny black dots around the edges. Handrail, metal floor patterned with grip diamonds. Nobody. He stepped inside, bounced twice to test the weight sensor. The panel still said occupied. Moisture gets in these, he said. Snow messes with IR. He keyed the service mode, sent the car to B, the basement, and told it to stay there. The doors closed. The arrow blinked down. The motor whined, then the car moved. Take B, he said. Hit the hold button so it stays put while you do trash. Thanks. He checked his phone. Gotta run next door. Holler if you get anything weird. He left me in the echoing lobby with the wind and the wet marble and the smell of cold metal. I made a loop with my mop, pushing slush back to the door. The place looked like a slaughter of snow. My hands were numb. When I finished, I grabbed the trash cart and headed for elevator B, the one we'd sent to the basement. The call button glowed white. The little triangle above the doors glowed green. I pressed. The doors slid open. Empty car. No hum this time. Just the dry smell of dust and warm circuitry. I wheeled the cart in, pressed B, and held the hold button like Luis told me. The car sunk slowly underground. The doors opened to the concrete hall behind the loading dock. Someone had propped the metal fire door open with a yellow wedge. Cold air flowed in from the dock, carrying the smell of salt, diesel, and wet cardboard. The dock roll-up door had iced over and was stuck half open, leaving a slot of night you could crawl under. I don't like the dock at night. It's a tunnel for wind and shadows, but it's the job. I work fast. Trash bags into the compactor, recycling stacked, bucket refill from the slop sink. My breath fogged the flashlight beam. I kept hearing the little sounds of a big, empty place. Drips, creaks, the tick of cooling metal, and every one of them turned into footsteps in my head. When I finished, I rolled back to the elevator and tapped the door close. Nothing. Tapped again. Nothing. The hold light was still on. I pressed it to release. The light went off. The door stayed open. Come on, I said. I thumbed the panel harder. The close button clicked soft. The doors didn't care. I stepped back into the hall, looking for the safety edge sensor. Sometimes if you brush it clean, the doors will wake up. That's when I noticed the floor. Wet boot prints tracked across the concrete, arcing from the wedge at the dock door past the badge reader to the wall by the elevator. The tread was deep and sharp, like someone had been standing in the cold a long time. They stopped at the edge of the door frame, right where I was. I looked up the empty lift shaft. I looked left toward the dock, where the dark lay 6 inches thick beneath the roll-up. An empty pallet on a jack shifted a fraction in the breeze. The yellow wedge trembled. I went cold in a different way. The close button clicked. The door slid shut fast enough to make me jump. The elevator gave a soft shiver and started up at once, like it had been waiting for me to move. As it rose, my phone buzzed in my pocket. A message from Luis. You still in B? Lost you on cam. They're fogged. Leaving now, I typed as the doors opened into the lobby. They opened onto darkness. The lobby lights had cut, leaving only the street glare and the blue sheen of exit signs. Sleet hissed against glass. The revolving doors were white with drift. A thin lace of snow reached across the floor like fingers. An elevator A, across the hall, was open a hand's width again, bumping itself, fighting itself. Ding! Bump. Ding. Bump. I wheeled the card out. The sound crawled up my spine. I texted, "Lights out here." Is glitching again. No reply. I looked for the red LED on the security cam dome at the ceiling. No light. The lobby felt like a stage after an audience has gone home. The elevator bumped and bumped and bumped. I walked toward it and stopped 2 steps away. I could see the silver edge of the doors kissing and springing, kissing and springing. A chewing motion. A very small, very stupid part of me wanted to put my fingers in that gap to prove to my body nothing was there. I bent instead and shine my phone light along the threshold. Clean, but the light caught something dark at the baseboard across the hall, the janitor closet. The metal door was locked with a push-button key switch. Only maintenance and cleaning had keys. I reached for mine out of habit, and my key ring fell too light. I flicked the phone light down. The long brass maintenance key was missing. My stomach fell through the floor. I hadn't used that key since 8 p.m. when I opened the stair monitor panel to silence an alarm. I always hang the ring on a hook while I mop. I always slide it into my belt when I'm done. Always. Unless someone slides one off while I'm in the restroom. Or while I'm bent into a wastebasket on 17. Or while I'm leaning into an elevator mouth that won't close. I took a step to the closet. The paint around the lock had a fresh nick, a gray crescent where a key had jumped and scratched. I pressed my ear to the door. I heard only wind. The elevator chime. Ding. And this time the tone came from above me. I looked up at the display. Elevator, it wasn't calling from lobby anymore. It was showing 19, then 18, then 17. It was stopping at every floor for a second. Doors open a hand's width. Doors close. Next floor, a snake slipping through the building. I pulled up the building text thread we use with night tenants. Law firms, a tech company, one private wealth outfit that never sleeps. I typed fast, storm shift. Keep doors locked. Don't let anyone in. A bubble popped up at once from a number I didn't have saved. We're here, 22nd. Someone in the hallway said their maintenance. Need to check smoke detectors. My chest crushed. No maintenance tonight. Do not open. No dots. No reply. I hit the call button for elevator B. It was in the basement again. Slow rise. The call light blinked. Elevator, a hump somewhere up there. The building moaned as another gust leaned on it. I thumbed Luis again. You up? Tenant on 22 says maintenance, knocking. Nothing. I walked to the stairwell and cracked the heavy door. A cold draft touched my face. Stairwells in tall buildings are breathing things. Something else moved. A smear of shadow 1 flight up, the kind of half-closed door throws when someone steps through and lets it swing. I let the door close and hooked the bar with the toe of my boot so it wouldn't latch. My heart felt like a fist. Elevator B opened behind me. I wheeled my cart inside and hit 22. As the car rose, I planned what I'd do. Keep distance, use my phone light, keep my back to a wall, try to get eyes on faces and IDs. If it was truly a tenant, fine. If not, I'd say the magic words that make people show their real intent. Security is on their way. The doors opened to 22 and the hallway air was wrong at once. Warmer, like something had been propped open. The carpet was pristine, no footprints, no salt. But the law firm's sweet light leak under the door was bright white when it should have been the amber of night mode. I walked slowly. Halfway down the hall, a smoker's door. One of those metal doors that leads to a little balcony stood cracked. Snow had blown in, melting to a wet crescent on the carpet. Next to it, the badge reader for the firm's door had fresh smudges like oily fingerprints. Then I heard it, a patient metallic rattle from beyond the suite door, like a tool trying and failing, trying and failing. I texted 22 law firm, someone at their door. Then I typed to the unknown number again. Do not open any door. Call 15 if someone tries. I knocked hard once and called security. The rattle stopped. Silence. Then soft footsteps. not hurrying, just moving away into the suite. Except the suite was locked. My head did a little flip until I realized I was hearing the sound through the wall from the service portal on the other side. In this building, there's a narrow back hall that connects suites to a freight elevator and a stair for deliveries. I stepped back, turned, and went the long way past the kitchenette, past the copier closet to the service door. It was locked too, but this one had a little square of glass set high. I stretched on my toes and peered through. A man stood with his back to me, shoulders hunched, prying at the law firm's back door with my long brass maintenance key jammed into the seam like a lever. He had a hoodie under a work jacket, the hood up, no tool belt, no elevator key set. His jeans were wet to mid-calf. He was patient, no panic. He worked like he had all the time in the world. I tapped the glass hard with my knuckle. "Security," I said. "Drop the key." He turned just enough for me to see his profile. He was younger than I expected. Calm. He smiled a little, not like a challenge, like he was deciding who I was to him. "Door's sticky," he said through the glass, like we were talking about the weather. "That's not your door," I said. He tilted his head like he was listening to a far-off sound. Maybe the elevator dinging somewhere. Maybe the building's breath. He put the key back into the seam and leaned. I backed away, thumbed 15 on my phone with my other hand, and spoke low into it, giving the address, the floor, the description. The dispatcher said someone was already on the way. Calls had come in from a block over about a man in a work jacket trying door handles. I looked back through the glass. The man was gone. No footsteps, no slam, just gone. I held my breath and listened. The building hummed and cracked. A ding came from the freight elevator at the far end of the service hall. I ran to the corner and caught a flash of a work jacket sliding into that car. The doors closed. The panel above it flicked. I sprinted back to the main elevator and hammered B. The car dropped. My legs felt like water. The doors opened to the dock again, to the wet concrete and the trembling wedge. And for a second, just a second, I saw him under the roll-up door, crawling into the night like a shadow, boots leaving sharp prints that melted as the snow blew through and smudged them. Then he was gone, just the wind and the slap of the wedge popping free, and the dock door slamming shut with a bang that rang in my teeth. Luis burst in from the lobby a minute later with 2 officers on his heels, red-cheeked and covered in powder. We walked the path, checked the badge readers, reviewed what camera footage we could. Most of the domes showed gray fog. Moisture had crawled in and turned everything to static. The one clear angle was a lobby cam that caught a shape in a work jacket walking in with me an hour earlier, head down, close enough to my cart that it looked like we were together. Tailgating, one of the officers said, shaking his head. "Every storm we get at least one of these. Not amateurs. They watch patterns, memorize codes, wait for a break." Luis found the janitor closet key on the floor outside the stairwell door, where I must have dropped it, or where someone had placed it, neat and clean, after using it once and trying a law firm's door. We checked the elevator logs. It had made short stops on 17 floors in 15 minutes, doors opening just enough to sell the story. Maintenance, quick check. It's a classic trick. Announce yourself in one spot. Fish for a soft target. Move on if no one bites. "We'll do another sweep," the officer said. "Lock everything. No exceptions." They stayed until 2, walking each floor that still had a light on. I finished my bins with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. At 3, the storm calmed enough for the lobby doors to close and hold. The elevators rested. The building exhaled. I went home as the sky turned the pale gray of a winter morning. When I closed my apartment door, I stood there with my hand on the knob, staring at the brass circle of my peephole, thinking of doors that won't shut and cars that open at every floor and smiles worn like uniforms. I still clean that tower. We change a few things. We badge the lobby after 10, even during storms. We prop nothing. We hang our keys on a chain that locks to a belt loop. And when an elevator opens a hand's width late at night and calls to the empty hall, I wait a beat and another and another. Sometimes it's only the wind. Sometimes it isn't. I went for a night run in the snow and realized someone was leaving footprints beside mine. At first, I thought it was just my shadow, stretching, breaking, bending under the flickering streetlights. But shadows don't leave prints. And when I finally looked down, there they were, a second set of footprints in the fresh snow, keeping perfect pace with mine. They hadn't been there a moment ago. I've been running at night for years. It's my way of shaking off the day, clearing my head. I live near a river path, 3 miles of winding trail between the water and the edge of town. It's beautiful in summer. In winter, it's quiet in a way that feels almost holy. You get the crunch of your shoes in the snow, the sound of your breath, the distant hum of the highway. That night, the storm had passed hours earlier, leaving behind a smooth, untouched layer of snow. It was so clean you could read the story of the night in it. The zigzag of a rabbit, the looping trails of dogs on early walks, the straight lines of plows on the nearby road. I was half a mile into my run when I noticed it. The first stretch of the trail runs under a row of working lamps, and the snow that was unbroken except for my own prints. But as I passed under a broken light, the one that's been out since last winter, there was a second set of prints beside mine. They were fresh, sharp edges, no melt, and they weren't there when I stepped into the pool of darkness. I slowed to look. The steps were just a little longer than mine. The toes pointed forward. The stride was confident, not the slip and slide of someone jogging on ice. My gut told me to turn around, but when I glanced over my shoulder, the path behind me was empty. Just my trail leading back to the last streetlight. I kept running, partly because I didn't want to seem afraid, partly because I didn't like the idea of stopping on a deserted path. The footprints stayed with me, always in sync, like whoever made them had matched my pace exactly. But here's the thing, when I hit another stretch of broken light, the prints vanished. My own tracks continued straight ahead, but the second set just stopped. I told myself it was some trick of wind or drifting snow. I wanted to believe that. I almost did, until my phone buzzed in my pocket. Unknown AirTag detected near you. I nearly tripped. I'd read about it. How AirTags could be slipped into someone's belongings to track them. I stopped under the next working light and scanned my clothes and shoes with the flashlight on my phone. Nothing. I pulled off my gloves, checked my pockets, my water belt, my hat. Still nothing. But the AirTag alert was still there, pulsing like a warning. The sound behind me made me turn, fast. Footsteps, not the even crunch of a runner. These were slower, more deliberate. I swung my light down the trail, but all I caught was the swirling snow and the skeletal branches of the trees leaning over the path. The noise stopped as soon as my light swept that way. I forced myself to keep moving, aiming for the pedestrian bridge a quarter-mile ahead. The bridge is well lit, spanning the river with steel grating underfoot. You can see in every direction from there. When I stepped onto the bridge, my shoes clanged on the grate, the sound echoing off the water. I stopped halfway across and scanned behind me. Nothing. But when I turned back, my stomach dropped. On the fresh snow of the bridge's approach, the side I hadn't even run on yet, there were footprints. Just one set, not mine, leading onto the bridge. I backed up toward the center, trying to keep my eyes on both ends at once. My phone buzzed again. The AirTag alert had shifted. It wasn't just near me anymore. It was moving with me. I tore through my clothes again, patting every pocket, flipping my gloves inside out, even shaking my water bottle. Nothing. Then I remembered the reflective vest I'd put on at the trailhead. It was loose-fitting with elastic at the sides. I yanked it off and turned it over my hands. There, tucked into the fold of the elastic, was a small white disc. An AirTag. My mouth went dry. Someone had placed it there recently. Very recently. I dropped it on the grate and stomped it hard until I heard the crack of plastic. Then I kicked the pieces into the river below. The relief lasted about 5 seconds until I heard the footsteps again. This time they were running. I sprinted for the far end of the bridge, my breath clouding in the freezing air. The steps pounded behind me, closer now, echoing off the steel. When I hit the snow again, I didn't look back. I cut left off the main trail into the side streets. The snow was deeper here, slowing me down, but I could see the glow of houses ahead. I didn't stop until I reached a lit porch and banged on the door. An older man answered, confused, robe pulled tight around him. I blurted out what happened, the AirTag, the footprints. He let me in without hesitation and called the police. By the time they arrived, there was no one on the trail. But an officer walked me back toward the bridge, shining his light along the path. There were my prints, and beside them, the other set, the same long stride, the same confident steps. They trailed me from the first broken streetlight to the bridge. On the bridge itself, the prints doubled back halfway across, then disappeared entirely in a scuff of disturbed snow near the railing. Either he jumped, the officer said, scanning the dark water below, or he climbed under the bridge. They never found him. I still run in winter, but not at night. Not on that trail. And I replaced the reflective vest with one I keep sealed in a drawer when I'm not wearing it. Because the part that sticks with me isn't just the footprints. It's the way they appeared only in the shadows. And the way, every time I stopped to check, the sound of those steps stopped too, like whoever was already knew the rhythm of mine. I went for a night run in the snow and realized someone was leaving footprints beside mine. At first, I thought it was just my shadow, stretching, breaking, bending under the flickering streetlights. But shadows don't leave prints. And when I finally looked down, there they were, a second set of footprints in the fresh snow, keeping perfect pace with mine. They hadn't been there a moment ago. I've been running at night for years. It's my way of shaking off the day, clearing my head. I live near a river path, 3 miles of winding trail between the water and the edge of town. It's beautiful in summer. In winter, it's quiet in a way that feels almost holy. You get the crunch of your shoes in the snow, the sound of your breath, the distant hum of the highway. That night, the storm had passed hours earlier, leaving behind a smooth, untouched layer of snow. It was so clean you could read the story of the night in it. The zigzag of a rabbit, the looping trails of dogs on early walks, the straight lines of plows on the nearby road. I was half a mile into my run when I noticed it. The first stretch of the trail runs under a row of working lamps. In the snow there was unbroken except for my own prints. But as I passed under a broken light, the one that's been out since last winter, there was a second set of prints beside mine. They were fresh, sharp edges, no melt, and they weren't there when I stepped into the pool of darkness. I slowed to look. The steps were just a little longer than mine. The toes pointed forward. The stride was confident, not the slip and slide of someone jogging on ice. My gut told me to turn around, but when I glanced over my shoulder, the path behind me was empty. Just my trail leading back to the last streetlight. I kept running, partly because I didn't want to seem afraid, partly because I didn't like the idea of stopping on a deserted path. The footprints stayed with me, always in sync, like whoever made them had matched my pace exactly. But here's the thing. When I hit another stretch of broken light, the prints vanished. My own tracks continued straight ahead, but the second set just stopped. I told myself it was some trick of wind or drifting snow. I wanted to believe that. I almost did until my phone buzzed in my pocket. Unknown AirTag detected near you. I nearly tripped. I'd read about it, how AirTags could be slipped into someone's belongings to track them. I I stopped under the next working light and scanned my clothes and shoes with the flashlight on my phone. Nothing. I pulled off my gloves, checked my pockets, my water belt, my hat. Still nothing. But the AirTag alert was still there, pulsing like a warning. A sound behind me made me turn, fast. Footsteps. Not the even crunch of a runner. These were slower, more deliberate. I swung my light down the trail, but all I caught was the swirling snow and the skeletal branches of the trees leaning over the path. The noise stopped as soon as my light swept that way. I forced myself to keep moving, aiming for the pedestrian bridge a quarter-mile ahead. The bridge is well lit, spanning the river with steel grating underfoot. You can see in every direction from there. When I stepped onto the bridge, my shoes clanged on the grate, the sound echoing off the water. I stopped halfway across and scanned behind me. Nothing. But when I turned back, my stomach dropped. On the fresh snow of the bridge's approach, the side I hadn't even run on yet, there were footprints. Just one set, not mine, leading onto the bridge. I backed up toward the center, trying to keep my eyes on both ends at once. My phone buzzed again. The AirTag alert had shifted. It wasn't just near me anymore, it was moving with me. I tore through my clothes again, patting every pocket, flipping my gloves inside out, even shaking my water bottle. Nothing. Then I remembered the reflective vest I'd put on at the trailhead. It was loose-fitting with elastic at the sides. I yanked it off and turned it over in my hands. There, tucked into the fold of the elastic, was a small white disc. An AirTag. My mouth went dry. Someone had placed it there recently. Very recently. I dropped it on the grate and stomped it hard until I heard the crack of plastic. Then I kicked the pieces into the river below. The relief lasted about 5 seconds until I heard the footsteps again. This time they were running. I sprinted for the far end of the bridge, my breath clouding in the freezing air. The steps pounded behind me, closer now, echoing off the steel. When I hit the snow again, I didn't look back. I cut left, off the main trail, into the side streets. The snow was deeper here, slowing me down, but I could see the glow of houses ahead. I didn't stop until I reached a lit porch and banged on the door. An older man answered, confused, robe pulled tight around him. I blurted out what happened, the AirTag, the footprints. He let me in without hesitation and called the police. By the time they arrived, there was no one on the trail. But an officer walked me back toward the bridge, shining his light along the path. There were my prints, and beside them, the other set, the same long stride, the same confident steps. They trailed me from the first broken streetlight to the bridge. On the bridge itself, the prints doubled back halfway across, then disappeared entirely in a scuff of disturbed snow near the railing. Either he jumped, the officer said, scanning the dark water below, or he climbed under the bridge. They never found him. I still run in winter, but not at night. Not on that trail. And I replaced the reflective vest with one I keep sealed in a drawer when I'm not wearing it. Because the part that sticks with me isn't just the footprints. It's the way they appeared only in shadows. And the way, every time I stopped to check, the sound of those steps stopped too, like whoever was already knew the rhythm of mine. I drove out to help a stalled car and saw the baby seat sitting there, empty in the dark. The wind was throwing snow sideways when my headlights hit the car. It was half buried in a ridge left by a plow. Driver's door cracked open. No hazards, no engine noise. Just a black shape with a pale lump of snow on the roof and a baby seat ghosting the back window. I sat there with the heater on full and felt the hair on my neck rise. Something about that open door in a storm felt wrong, like a mouth held just slightly ajar. I should tell you how I ended up there. I volunteer with a roadside assistance group that works with the county. On normal nights, I jump batteries and deliver gas. In winter storms, it's mostly stuck cars and calm voices. We drive marked pickups with light bars and triangles, and we log every stop in an app the county sees. That night, the storm had already shut down half the town. Power lines were groaning. The county radio said plows were pulling off the back roads because the wind kept pushing drifts across behind them. Calls stacked up, and then dispatch pushed a priority welfare check. A young caller on a farm road with a dead car and no heat. The voice had sounded scared. That's what the note said. Caller sounds young, cold, battery dying. Our rule is to go in pairs on unlit roads in bad weather. But the two other volunteers were already out on rollovers, and the sheriff's office was dragging chains on a crash 15 miles west. It would be an hour before anyone else could get there. I was 10 minutes away. The app showed a pin. The dispatcher said, "If you see the vehicle, stage. Don't approach if you feel unsafe." I told myself I'd do exactly that. Stage, check, wait for a deputy. Good plan, safe plan. But plans feel different when you see an open door in the snow. The road, County 4-1, was the kind of blacktop that runs straight as a string between fields. At night, it's just telephone poles and whatever your headlights can reach. I turned off onto a farm lane made of packed gravel and ice, following my GPS. The wind came at me broadside and shoved the truck across the lane like a slow, steady hand. There weren't any houses in sight, just the idea of them behind the wall of white. I killed the siren and left the amber bar flashing. Rules say you block the lane at an angle, so you're visible from both sides, and so you can leave fast. I did that without thinking. Habit is a good thing when your brain starts telling stories. Through the glass, the car looked small. Four-door sedan, road salt crusted along the doors. The back window was fogged from frost, softening the shape of the baby seat. Dark blanket thrown across it. The open driver's door had a skim of snow along the top edge where the wind had blown it in. I radioed in county, roadside 2 on scene. One sedan, black, driver's door jar. No visible occupants. No hazards. Static then, copy roadside 2. Deputies en route, ETA 20. I told myself I'd wait. I put on my hat and gloves and opened my door. Wind slapped me. Snow stung. The cold hit my teeth. I grabbed 2 LED triangles and set them behind my bumper, then one ahead, pushing their little feet into the drift so they wouldn't skitter away. My light bar washed the lane and the car in amber. The storm erased everything else. I stood behind my truck and listened. Nothing but the hiss of snow and the thrum of my engine. I swept my flashlight across the car and the ditch. No movement. The snow in the ditch looked smooth. No one crouched there, no fresh slide marks. I told myself I'd take 10 steps, look inside, and come back. Just eyes on. Just enough to tell dispatch if anyone was in immediate danger. I walked up on the left side, keeping the vehicle between me and the ditch, the way we're trained. My boots squeaked on ice under the powder. The open door creaked just a little like breath. Roadside assistance. I called, not too loud. Hello. Nothing. I leaned closer and shone my light across the driver's seat. The keys weren't in the ignition. The dash was dead. The seat was empty. There was a small scrape on the plastic above the door handle, as if a ring had dragged across it when someone got out fast. I moved the beam to the back seat. The baby seat sat rear-facing, buckled tight. The blanket was thrown over it, like someone meant to keep it warm. I reached in and touched the blanket. It was cold and stiff on top, crusted with a thin skin of frost. Underneath, the cloth was damp and colder still. No baby, just the ache of the idea of one. I swallowed and took one step back, careful not to slip. The snow on top of the roof had a neat flat spot where someone's glove had rested, maybe when they leaned in to grab something. The door pocket was empty. No maps, no wrappers. Clean in a way that felt unnatural. "County," I said on the radio, keeping my voice steady. "Vehicle appears unoccupied. Baby seat present, empty. Copy, dispatch said. Caller call back, not connecting. I walked around the rear of the car, keeping to the wheel tracks. The license plate was coded. I brushed it with my glove and read it out. Dispatch read it back to me with the registered owner. The name meant nothing to me. A random person out here in a random storm. That should have been it. Confirm empty. Wait in the warm truck for a deputy to bless the scene. But two things happened almost at once. First, my portable radio crackled, and I heard a voice I didn't know, thin and too clear for our system, like someone was right beside me. Roadside 2, what's your exact location? Wrong cadence. Wrong call sign. Dispatch doesn't ask like that, and our channel doesn't sound that clean in weather. Second, the beam of my flashlight caught the faintest arc in the snow beyond the ditch. Not footprints, those get filled fast in wind, but an odd hollow in the drift where the snow had fallen differently. I stepped closer. The hollow was long and narrow, like someone had laid there for a while and then rolled out. The surface had skinned over with glowing crystals, but the shape was still there. I turned back to my truck. It looked very far away. I felt the old animal urge in my legs. Run, but running on ice gets you nothing but a cracked skull. I kept walking, slow and steady, and climbed up into the driver's seat. I locked the doors, set the truck to reverse, and backed up 5 feet, then pulled forward so my bumper lined with the car's rear quarter panel. That way my headlights blasted the drift beyond the ditch, bleaching any shadow out of it. For a heartbeat, I thought I saw a glove, dark against white. Then the wind pushed a sheet of snow across, and the shape became just drift. The radio crackled again, same clean voice. Roadside 2, confirm in front of the vehicle. If you can't see me, wave your light. My stomach turned. Dispatch never talks like that. I kept my thumb off the transmit and sent a text through the app instead. Unverified voice on radio, asking location. Possible third party. The app showed me the spinning wheel of no service and then blinked back to queued. Good enough. It would send when it could. I toggled my loudspeaker and let the truck horn give a short blast. It jumped off the car in the field and came back thin. If someone was waiting to see if I'd go soft and turn my back, that sound would tell them I wasn't deaf and I wasn't alone. Even if, right then, I thought about putting a tow strap on the sedan and yanking it clear for when the plow came back. That thought died as soon as I pictured kneeling to hook the strap in the dark between bumper and ditch. I left the truck idling and looked again at the car. One detail kept bugging me, the rearview mirror. It was tilted down too far, like someone had pushed it to keep it from reflecting light. People do that when they park long, or when they don't want to see headlights behind them, or when they don't want someone to see them from behind. I leaned on the horn again, 2 short beats. The sound felt small against the wind. My phone vibrated in my coat pocket. Not a call, the faint tick of a notification finally pushing through. I dug it out. It was a text from a number I didn't know. Saw your lights. You okay? It had a pinned location attached, close, maybe a quarter mile away, the dot sitting on a farmhouse icon. Under it, our camera caught a truck near the road earlier. I replied fast. Roadside assistance. At black sedan. Anyone from your place? Come out the car? The dot's chased and stopped. Then no. Husband is up checking the barn. I can see your amber lights from the kitchen. Do not get out. I was already in, but I knew what she meant. Another text followed with a still frame from a security camera. The timestamp was 20 minutes earlier. The frame showed a truck shape, not mine, idling at the edge of the lane, lights off. A man's figure moved in front of it, head down, a hood, a jacket bulky with layers. In the next photo, he was gone and the truck had rolled back a few feet. On the third, empty lane, blowing snow. The radio popped. The wrong voice again, closer now, like a person speaking low, so a mic picked it clean. Roadside 2, if you need help, wave. I'm behind the car. I didn't look. I kept my eyes on the drift where that long body mark had been. The wind had blurred it into an ordinary lump. I pressed transmit. County, roadside 2. Be advised, unknown party on channel. Claiming to be on scene. I have not made visual contact. Request expedite. Static, and then dispatch, stretched thin but steady. Copy, roadside 2. Unit 9 is 2 out. I pictured Unit 9 crawling his way to me, wipers squealing, watching for taillights like his life depended on it. Maybe it did. Maybe mine did too. I put the truck in drive and rolled 2 feet forward, then 2 feet back, the way you do when you're about to pull a stuck car, but want to see if your tires will find grip. The headlights shaved the drift one way, then the other. On the third swing, I saw it clear. A boot, the brown of old leather, disappearing in an instant under fresh snow like a fish under a ripple. No more pretending. I thumbed the loudspeaker and said in my calmest, most boring voice, sheriff's office has eyes on. Stay back and show your hands. I don't know why I said it that way. Maybe I wanted the sentence to do 2 jobs. Tell whoever was out there I wasn't alone, and tell them I wasn't going to play hero, because heroes get stupid and die. A shape rose from the snow like it had been born there, slow and heavy, the way men move when they've been still too long. A hooded head, shoulders, the slope of a pry bar against a thigh. He didn't look at me. He looked at the sedan like it had almost done what he wanted. He took 1 step, then another, and the wind jumped and blew a curtain between us, and in that white second, I dropped the truck into reverse and floored it. The rear tire's fishtail bit shoved me back. I cranked the wheel and straightened, and then I was 15 feet away, then 30, the amber bar flashing on a shrinking scene of car, drift, and a man stranded by his own plan. He didn't chase. He turned his face toward my lights and just watched me, flat, like he was trying to memorize the shape of my truck. Then he ducked and slid down the back of the drift into the field. I drove backward all the way to the crossroad, hands light on the wheel, eyes flicking between mirrors. At the stop sign, Unit 9's blue and red bloomed through the storm like heat in a cold body. He swung his SUV across the lane to block, and we both hit our brakes hard enough to rock. He rolled his window down. You good? Yeah. I had to swallow twice to get the word out. 1 on foot, pry bar, using the car as bait. He nodded once. A kind of nod that says, of course he was. Stay behind me. We'll light it. We rolled back up together, me offset to wash the ditch with amber, while his spotlight cut the drift in hard white. The sedan looked smaller now that there were 2 of us. The open door still hung there, dumb and soft, snow frosting the armrest. Unit 9 got out low, light in one hand, the other on his belt. He didn't approach the car. He walked the ditch first, sweeping the drift, then the fence line, then the long slide down into the field. The wind ate his footprints as fast as he made them. He spotted something dark half-buried at the bottom of the ditch and pointed without stooping. Don't touch it, he called over the wind. I didn't plan to. It was a coil of nylon zip ties and a cheap bag, the kind you buy in bulk. Next to it, a pair of gloves and a rag. On the rag, a smear of something slippery that could have been oil, could have been something else. He swept the drift near where the shape had risen and nudged a tire iron out of the snow with his boot. He pointed the light at it and let his radio click once. Another unit would hear that click and know what it meant. They trained them for simple signals because storms eat words. We left the sedan where it was. He took the plate, the VIN, the photos. Back in his SUV, he ran the registered owner again and got a different address than the PIN dispatch had. He muttered something under his breath and then looked at me. You did right, he said. They've been doing this on farm roads this week. We pull 3 of these a winter, and there's always one that goes bad. He took my statement right there with gloves on. He asked for my dashcam card. I handed it over and watched my hands shake more than I wanted them to. He asked about the young caller. I told him what dispatch had sent, that a young voice sounded cold and scared. He stared at the sedan for a long beat and said, "They copy voices off TikTok now. Play them on a Bluetooth." People hear the cry and their brain goes soft. He wasn't being cruel. He was being careful with words. The farmhouse texted again. We saw 2 sets of lights earlier. One was a pickup, one parked half a mile up by the silo road for a while. Unit 9 went to look with another SUV when it arrived. I stayed in my truck, sweat going cold under my coat now that the rush had burned off. I turned the heat down. I stared at the baby's seat until I felt sick from it. 30 minutes later, a tow showed up with chains rattling. They winched the sedan out and rolled it into a lot to hold. In the morning, a deputy said the owner had sold it for cash 2 days ago. The buyer never filed a transfer. They had no name. The wrong voice on the radio never came back. The app queue dumped my warning text through at 3 a.m. long after it mattered. The farmhouse sent one last message before dawn. Be safe. We keep coffee in a thermos on the porch for folks in storms. Take some if you want. I did. I stood in their pale morning and drank from chipped mug, fingers thawing, looking out at the lane and the field and the drift that now looked like any other drift. The wind had erased the long body mark. It had erased the glove, the boot prints, the moment where a face turned toward my lights and decided not to rush. Why try to sleep now? The image that comes isn't the empty car or the baby's seat. It's the radio voice, too clear for the storm, asking for my exact location in a cadence that almost sounded right. Almost. It sits in my head like a loose wire, buzzing, and I'm grateful for the part of me that heard it and said no. I still go out on storm nights. I still carry triangles and straps and a thermos that smells like coffee forever. But I park with my lights on the ditch, and I don't kneel in the dark, and I keep my door open and my seatbelt off, and I assume that if a thing can be used as bait, sooner or later someone will try. And when I hear a voice on the radio, I don't know, I don't wave my light. I don't move. I'll let the wind erase everything that doesn't belong, and I wait until the right lights find me. I booked a snowy Airbnb and found out I wasn't the only one living there. The ringtone was coming from inside a locked room. It was faint, muffled by wood, but I could hear it in the quiet of the cabin, echoing under the hum of the heater. It rang once, stopped, then started again. The worst part? I'd been alone in the house all night. At least I thought I had. A week earlier, I'd booked the Airbnb on a whim. I'd been drowning in deadlines, and the photos made it look perfect. A quaint 2-bedroom cabin in the mountains, snow piled high on the porch, a lake frozen solid in the background. The host listing said it was self-check-in with a lockbox, and that I'd have the entire place to myself. I arrived late on Friday. It had been snowing all day, and by the time I got to the long gravel drive, there was already 6 inches of powder covering the ground. My tires crunched through it, headlights bouncing off snowbanks as I pulled up to the cabin. It looked just like the photos, except older. The siding was more weathered, the paint on the porch railings chipped. I figured the pictures had been taken a few years ago. I found the lockbox, popped it open, and let myself in. The interior was rustic and cozy, wood paneling, a big brick fireplace, plaid curtains. But something felt off. For one thing, 2 of the interior doors, one in the hallway, one in the back corner of the living room, were nailed shut. Literally. The nails weren't old either. They were bright, fresh, and hammered and clean. Storage, I told myself. Old cabins sometimes have rooms you can't use. But the air in the house had that lived-in smell, coffee, detergent, something faintly metallic. I wandered through the kitchen and noticed the Wi-Fi name on the card the host left didn't match the one my phone saw. The card said Lakeview Cabin _guest. My phone picked up Netgear 24G. That meant someone had changed the router, or there was another one running in the house. It made me uneasy, but I brushed it off. I was tired, and the snow was still coming down hard outside. I made tea, unpacked, and tried to relax. The first weird noise came around 2 a.m. I'd been dozing on the couch, fire crackling, when I heard soft footsteps above me. That didn't make sense. The cabin didn't have a second floor. I sat up, heart thudding, and realized the sound was coming from the ceiling over the nailed-shut room in the living room corner. I told myself it was just the storm shifting snow on the roof, but the steps had a rhythm to them. Slow, deliberate. The next morning, the snow had stopped, but the driveway was buried. I was stuck until a plow came through, so I spent the day reading and drinking coffee. I didn't hear any more noises. That night, around midnight, I was sitting at the kitchen table scrolling through my phone when I heard it, a ringtone. It was faint, but clear enough to recognize. Not mine. My phone was in my hand. I followed the sound down the short hallway, stopping at the second nailed-shut door. The ringing was coming from inside. I backed away fast, my pulse kicking up. Whoever's phone that was, it meant someone could be in there. I checked the Airbnb listing again, scrolling through the fine print. It still said entire place. I grabbed my coat and boots, thinking maybe I should just leave, but when I stepped onto the porch, the night swallowed me. The snowbank at the end of the drive was taller than my car. I wasn't walking miles to the main road in freezing temperatures. I went back inside and locked the front door. Around 3 a.m., I woke to the sound of movement, soft shuffling in the hallway. My bedroom door was cracked open just enough for me to see shadows pass by. I didn't breathe. The shadows paused outside my door for a long moment, then moved away toward the nailed-shut room. The next sound was a low knock. Not on my door, on the nailed-shut one. 3 knocks, then silence. In the morning, I decided I was done. I didn't care if the plow hadn't come yet. I'd dig myself out. I packed my bag, loaded my stuff into the car, and tried to start it. The engine wouldn't turn over. That's when I saw it. Footprints in the snow, leading from the back of the cabin to my car. They circled it once, then headed back toward the house. I called a friend to come pick me up, but the signal was spotty. I managed to get one text out with my location before the call dropped. I waited on the porch, clutching my bag. After about an hour, I saw a figure come from around the back of the cabin. It wasn't my friend. It was a man in a heavy coat, hood pulled up, gloves on. He was carrying a grocery bag. Without looking at me, he unlocked the back door and went inside. I didn't follow. My friend showed up 30 minutes later in his truck. I didn't even look back as I climbed in. When I messaged the host to ask about the man, they didn't respond. The listing disappeared from Airbnb 2 days later. I never found out who was in that nailed-shut room, but I still remember that ringtone, muffled, patient, like it was waiting for me to come closer. My carbon monoxide alarm went off, and then someone tried to shut it off from outside my door. It started with the chirp, not the long, urgent wail you expect from a smoke alarm. Just a single, sharp chirp in the dark. I sat up in bed, half asleep, and waited. 30 seconds later, it came again. By the third chirp, I was fully awake, staring at the blinking red light on my carbon monoxide detector. When I got up to check it, I found the screws loose and a faint mark on the wall where someone had tried to take it down. I live in a small apartment block, 12 units, 3 floors. The building is old but quiet, the kind of place where you recognize every face in the hall. My unit is on the 2nd floor, right in the middle. I'd been there 3 years without much drama. That winter had been brutal. Snow drifts up to the windowsills, ice coating the gutters. The night the alarm went off, the temperature had dropped so low the pipes were rattling. I thought maybe the old heating system was just acting up. I took the detector off the wall and replaced the batteries. When I turned it back on, the reading shot up to 88 ppm in angry red digits. That wasn't a glitch. That was dangerous. I opened my windows to let in the freezing air and started knocking on my neighbors' doors. First stop was 3B, right above me. No answer. I could hear the faint hum of something inside, like a motor running. I knocked again, harder. Nothing. When I got back to my apartment, the front door to the building slammed shut downstairs. Heavy boots echoed on the stairs, then stopped. I froze, listening. The sound that came next made my skin crawl, the slow twist of my own doorknob. Whoever it was didn't knock, didn't call my name, just tested the handle. Then I heard the faint, unmistakable sound of my CO detector being pulled off the wall. The chirping stopped mid-beep. I yanked the door open, but the hallway was empty. The detector lay on the floor, battery cover open. I grabbed it and called the landlord, but he brushed it off. It's probably old batteries. Those things go off all the time in winter. Just close your windows. You'll lose all the heat. When I insisted the reading was real, his tone changed, clipped, annoyed. Don't call the fire department. I'll send someone to check tomorrow. Tomorrow wasn't good enough. I called the non-emergency line for the fire department anyway. They told me to leave the building immediately and wait for a crew. I sat in my car in the lot, engine running for heat, watching the front door. 15 minutes later, 2 firefighters went inside with portable detectors. When they came back out, their faces were grim. One of them leaned in my window and said, "It's not your unit. It's 3B. Someone's running a gas-powered generator in the kitchen." They went back in with police. The tenant in 3B didn't answer at first, but when they finally opened the door, a wave of exhaust rolled into the hall so thick one of the firefighters doubled over coughing. The man inside was agitated, pacing. They said he'd been keeping the pipes from freezing after his heat stopped working. He'd sealed the windows with duct tape and had the generator running full blast. If they hadn't found it when they did, everyone in the building could have been overcome in their sleep. Before they escorted him out, one of the officers asked him about my detector. He looked right at me in the hall and said, "It wouldn't shut up. I figured if I took it down, you'd stop making a fuss." The landlord replaced the batteries in the hallway detectors the next day, but never mentioned the incident in writing. I bought my own CO monitor, the kind with a hidden camera in it, and keep it plugged in by the door now. Because the part that keeps me up isn't the generator. It's the sound of my doorknob turning in the middle of the night, slow and quiet, like someone was making sure I couldn't hear them. Every night, the same car parked outside, and its windshield kept melting from the inside. The first time I noticed it, I thought it was just another car stuck in the snow. A dull, gray sedan across the street, coated in frost like every other vehicle on the block. But even from my window, I could see a small, perfect circle on the windshield where the frost had melted, right at face height, like someone was breathing on the glass from the inside. The second night, the circle was back. The engine wasn't running. The lights were off. The car just sat there, quiet and patient. The rest of the windshield fogged white, except for that dark coin where a person might rest their forehead and watch. By the fourth night, I knew it wasn't an accident. It was a habit. I live in a row of small houses on a street that looks cozy in daylight and a little bleak at midnight. In winter, the city pushes snow against the curbs until it becomes a low wall. We all rotate, shoveling the sidewalk, trading nods and stiff smiles under clouds of breath. It's a good block. Kids play here in summer. People bring in packages for each other. When my furnace died in December, the neighbor 2 doors down left a space heater on my porch without note. That's why the car felt wrong. Everything else on our street belongs to someone. I can tell you who owns the red SUV, the dented hatchback, the silver minivan with the sticker that says "baby on board." But the gray sedan belonged to nobody. It never moved during the day. It only appeared after dark, late, and disappeared with the first pale light. On the 5th night, I opened my front door and stood on the porch with my arms wrapped tight inside my coat. The cold bit hard at my ears. Across the street, The sedan sat in the shadow between two streetlights. No plate lights, no dome light. The windshield was black except for that small clear spot. I thought about going over and knocking on the window, "Hey, you okay?" But even in my own head, that sounded like a lie. What I meant was, "Why are you watching my house?" Instead, I took a photo with my phone. When I zoomed in, the image broke into grain and noise. I could see the circle, the curve of the steering wheel, the seam of the dashboard. Nothing else. No face, no shape, just the sense that someone had sucked the heat out of their own breath to make a hole in the frost. The next morning, there was no car. Tracks in the slush showed where it had been. A rectangle of compressed snow, tire marks blurred by the city plow. I asked the neighbor with the space heater if he'd seen anything. He shook his head and said, "A lot of folks sleeping in cars since the shelter's filled. Probably nothing." I wanted to agree. I want a reason to stop thinking about it. But probably nothing doesn't park in the same spot every night and leave behind a window that looks like an eye. I bought a battery power motion camera and pointed it at the street. It's a cheap one, the kind that sends grainy clips to your phone when something moves. I figured if it was a person sleeping, I could call a non-emergency line and ask someone to check on them. If it was a thief checking door handles, at least I'd know before I woke to missing packages or smashed glass. I mounted the camera under the porch light as snow feathered down around me. The air smelled like iron. Winter has a taste when it's this deep, clean and sharp like old pennies. That night the alert started after midnight. One ping, then another, then another. I muted the sound and watched 4, 5, 6 clips in a dim room while the radiator clanked and the wind tapped at the windows. Clip 1, the empty street, snow drifting like static. Clip 2, headlights off camera, a glow that breathes and fades. Clip 3, the gray sedan sliding into place and going dark. Clip 4, nothing but falling snow. Clip 5, the dome light flickers on for a quarter second and dies. Clip 6, a figure steps out. He was taller than I expected. Hood up, shoulders hunched against the cold. He stood by the driver's door for a moment, looking straight across at my porch camera. Not moving, not waving, just standing as if counting my windows. Then he walked up my block, past my house, past the next. At the corner, he turned and disappeared out of frame. 2 minutes later, he came back, moving slower this time, stopping at points along the sidewalk to try the handles on parked cars. One tug per handle, no jerking, no bashing. Patient, practiced. At my porch, he didn't come up the steps. He stayed on the sidewalk and looked up at the camera again. The sensor flared the whites of his eyes into a flat smear and washed the rest of his face to nothing. He walked back to the sedan and sat down inside. The dome light didn't come on. He didn't leave for another hour. The next day, I printed a note and slid it into a plastic sleeve to keep it dry. No overnight parking. It said, even though that's not a real rule on our street. The city allows it. Our block tolerates it. But nothing at all felt better than that car. I waited until dark and taped the note to a piece of cardboard so I could wedge it into the snowbank across from my house. Then I went inside and watched the cold turn the glass blue. He came at 12:41. The camera got another clip of the sedan pulling up and stopping. The note stood at a polite angle, patient and useless. The driver sat, unmoving for a long minute. Finally, he leaned forward and the circle on the windshield bloomed again. I watched his gloved hand reach out slowly, take the note, fold it once, and drop it on the passenger seat. He didn't drive away. He stayed for another 40 minutes while the note sat beside him like a small, quiet reminder he didn't care about. At 1:32, he got out. He crossed my porch and climbed halfway up, slow and careful, like he knew which treads creaked. He didn't touch the doorbell. He didn't try to handle it. He stood in front of the door for 5 minutes without moving at all. That was the clip I watched the most. Not because it showed his face, it didn't, but because of the stillness. It takes a specific kind of person to stand that way without fidgeting. Animals know what stillness means. It means waiting. It means a plan. By the time I went to the window to look, he was gone. The car stayed where it was until dawn, then left without a sound. I took the video to the police station 2 days later after the same thing happened again. I showed it to the desk officer, a woman with a square jaw and a tired voice. She watched the clip twice, then asked for the timestamps and my address. "We'll drive by tonight," she said. "We're short with the weather, but if a unit is close, they'll take a look. Can you run the plate?" I asked. I tried to get it with my phone, but the slush covers it every time. "We can if we catch on a camera," she said. "We're not allowed to run one on a complaint unless there's a violation. But if a patrol sees it without plates lit, they'll say hello." I bought a better camera on the way home. I aimed one at the street and another down the steps. I slept badly. At 3:11 a.m., the sidewalk camera woke up my phone with a sharp chirp. I opened one eye, then both. He was back. The same hood, the same hunched shape. He climbed to the top step and stood again. No knock, no ring. I saw his breath fog and vanish. His hands hung at his sides, empty. It would have been easier if he'd been holding a tool. Easier to decide what to do. But a person could be a tool all by himself. It felt crazy, but I typed a message to a neighbor group chat. "Anyone else notice a gray sedan on the block at night?" 3 dots pulsed. A reply, "Yes. Parked by us 2 nights. Guy just stands there. Creepy." Another, "Try my car doors last night." I yelled and he walked away. A third, "Don't go out alone. I'll keep my porch light on." This is how a block becomes a group. In summer you borrow a ladder and a hand. In winter you borrow eyes. The 10th night it snowed hard. The kind of snow that erases the whole street by 10 and makes it look like a bright, empty field. I made tea and sat by the front window like a cliche in a movie. Around 12:30, headlights bubbled through the snow. The sedan rolled in from the far end, squeezed into the same gap between the same 2 light poles, and died. I didn't need to feed. I could see the silhouette through the front curtain. The melted coin expanded on the windshield. A minute later, the door opened and the shadow climbed out. He didn't look up this time. He walked straight to my porch and put 1 foot on the bottom step, then took it off, then put it back. The ritual lasted long enough for my skin to prickle. Then he climbed to the top again and stood. I lifted my phone. I didn't open the camera app. I dialed non-emergency and said the words the dispatcher probably hears too often. "It's probably nothing, but..." She didn't laugh. She said, "Stay inside. Keep your doors locked. A unit is close." I set the phone face down and moved through my house room by room without turning on lights, checking windows, checking locks. In the kitchen, I paused by the back door and listened. The only sound was the refrigerator whining, then settling. When I came back to the front window, he was gone. The car was still there. Snow kept falling like the sky was being graded. I waited 5 minutes, then 10. A patrol car rolled down the block slow enough to nudge the drifts aside with its bumper. It stopped behind the sedan and sat with its lights off. I saw a flashlight beam flicker once, twice inside the sedan, then sweep the snow. The officers didn't find anybody. The sedan's interior was empty. The glove box was clean. No plates on the back, just a bracket and 2 empty screw holes. One officer walked across to my porch and spoke to me through the door. He was careful with his voice, the way you are when you want to calm someone without promising things you can't deliver. He said they'd tow the car if it came back without plates lit. He said that sometimes people rent and sell cars in private sales and never file transfers. He said a lot of things that were probably true. When he left, I sat on the floor with my back to the door and the cold seeping through the threshold into my legs. I waited until the tow truck hooked and pulled and the gray shape went soft in the snow. The next night the car didn't come back. The night after it did. This time, the dome light flicked on longer than a blink. Long enough for the street camera to catch a frame I could use. The photo showed a face, but not in the way you want. The sensor flattened his features into high contrast and made his eyes black pits. The angle warped the line of his mouth. He looked like a man wearing his own face badly. I sent the frame to the same officer from before. He wrote back, "We'll swing by and stay inside, and we have your number." I didn't wait for them. I went outside. It wasn't brave. It was a kind of short circuit. You can only sit and watch someone stand at your door so many nights before your body decides to make a move so your brain won't. I stepped onto the porch and into air that felt like it could crack. The snow squeaked under my boots, that tiny scream good winter snow makes. Across the street, the windshield coin was bright and black. "Can I help you?" I said. My voice sounded brittle. The sedan didn't respond. The door didn't open. The coin didn't change. I took 2 steps down the porch and stopped. "I called the police," I said. "They're coming." Something moved in the car. Not much. The kind of shift a person makes to remind you they are there whenever they want. Then the dome light winked on and off. Once. Twice. 3 times. Like a slow code. I went back inside and locked the door and stood there breathing like I'd run a block. I watched through the side light as the police turned onto the street and as the sedan slid away from the curb like it had been pulled by a rope. No chase. The conditions were too bad. You don't push speed on a block full of kids and old people and tired workers. The patrol car followed at a distance and turned out to the main road. The sedan's taillights disappeared into the white. I didn't sleep. Owls called. The radiator banged. My house felt like a person I was trying to keep calm. 3 days later, a detective knocked at noon. He held a piece of paper and a heat you only carry from car to a door. He said they'd found the sedan 2 neighborhoods over abandoned in an alley. The VIN came back as sold 2 days before the first night I saw it. Cash. Handwritten bill of sale. The seller said he didn't remember a name. The buyer's address was a P.O. box. The plates on the car had been fakes from a different state. He slid a printed photo across my table. It was my porch camera frame, enhanced, the noise cleaned, the weird shadow softened. It looked worse that way. It looked more like a person I might pass on a sidewalk. "Seen him before?" the detective asked. "I don't think so. You might not again," he said. "Or you might. People like this revisit. They leave when you get eyes. They change cars. They come back when it's quiet. Don't let your door be quiet." He told me simple things. Keep lights on a timer. Don't leave packages out. Don't put names on the mailbox. Check the rear alley. Check the side gate. Know your neighbor's schedules. Call when anything feels like something. Those aren't hero rules. They're survival rules. He left me a card and a look that said he wanted me to call even if I was wrong. The truth is, the car was never the worst part. It was the waiting. It was the perfect circle on the glass, the size of forehead, and the way it implied a ritual. Someone sits. Someone breathes. Someone watches a door. If you've never watched your own door for hours, you might not know how alive it is. It flinches when the furnace kicks. It sighs in the frame when the wind pulls. It holds your heat and your life inside like a secret. A week passed. 2. The evenings softened by half a degree. The snowbanks shrank to dirty sculptures. The city chewed another lane into the ice. Then, in the middle of a new night that had no snow at all, my phone buzzed. The porch camera had sent a clip. I opened it with a hand I wished was steadier. Sidewalk empty. Street empty. Then from the left edge, a figure moved quickly out of frame and up my steps without a pause. No hood. No heavy coat. A cap I didn't recognize. He didn't stand at the top this time. He tried the knob. Not rough. Not angry. Just a simple turn. The deadbolt held. He looked up at the camera, and I saw a calm face I could easily forget. That scared me more than a wild one. He put one hand in his pocket and pulled it out again, empty, like he'd changed his mind about a tool. Then he stepped off the porch and walked away. No car. No sound. Just a person who had decided to do nothing that night. I saved the clip. I sent it to the detective. He wrote back a single word: patrols. I added another screw to the strike plate. I put a dowel on the back door track. I learned which stairs outside complained and which stayed silent. Sometimes I fall asleep to that knowledge like it's a lullaby. Sometimes I think about the melted circle on the windshield and how small it was. How long a person has to sit still to make a spot like that through ice. How much patience it takes to breathe that way. That's the thing that stays with me. Not the footsteps, not the soft click of a knob trying in the night. It's the patience. It means he can wait. So can I.